Rick and Morty presents Sleepy Gary. We start out with Rick telling Morty in the lab that he's done the gene reconstruction and now it's just the memories. And we see Sleepy Gary from the show having some false memories of stuff like holding baby Morty and marrying Beth and hanging out with Jerry. Rick explains that these memories are self-restoring and it's a complex gene memory structure, and then we see Sleepy Gary in a tube unconscious, with Rick telling Morty that it's not a person, it's an alien parasite. Why did he revive him? Seriously. That's such a dumb risk. After all the trouble those aliens caused him in the show, where they took over his whole house and replicated themselves so much, he, grows a new Sleepy Gary for science? He could say it's because he likes the satisfaction of keeping him away from Jerry, so he could keep him trapped in a tube to be mean to him. It's not explained that this is an alternate universe Sleepy Gary and he kidnapped him. But he has to have, because where else would he have gotten his DNA? This could have taken place in an alternate universe, and this could have been the first time Sleepy Gary ever bothered Jerry. Then we see narration from Sleepy Gary, who realizes that he's in the garage, and he genuinely believes that it's his garage and Rick is his father-in-law. So, the alien parasites actually believe in the lie that they brainwash other people into believing. He thinks that Rick found out that he was cheating on his daughter with Jerry, and performed experiments on him in retribution, which would be why his memories were so hard to find. Why are they hard to find? Is it that all Rick knew about him were the memories of him pretending to be Sleepy Gary, so that's all the memories he could give him? He hits the glass of the tube he's trapped in, and that must be the weakest glass ever, for no reason at all, because somehow he breaks out. It makes sense if he died from the shards of glass going into him right after that, but that makes sense. If it weren't for the fact that Rick and Morty is such an interesting and charming series all the time, I'd be snarky and bitter right away, because right now there's two things that make this entire plot disappointingly forced, like it's a Sonic story. I don't understand how the story is happening. But I know that the story is going to be interesting enough to make up for it. And I'm glad to see Sleepy Gary again, because he always had the story potential. He calls out for Jerry and coughs, and he clothes himself with a spare lab coat and steals a portal gun looking for Jerry. It's amusing that Rick says to Morty on the way to the lab, "Do you detonate an atomic bomb to kill a fly?" Then he sees what happens, and Sleepy Gary goes into a building and brainwashes the guy who says he can't come into the building fairly closed. It's interesting to see a villain with such an overpowered ability. And he doesn't want to take over the world or anything that high stakes. Of course, his ultimate goal can't be achieved anyways, because God forbid, that would change the status quo, and make Jerry at least think that he's happy, and upset the main characters. So there's no actual tension regardless. My point is, he'll get to do a wide variety of brainwashing, so it's interesting to see how he convinces people to humor him. He makes a fake memory of him at an office party being pelted with water balloons, saying that he's gonna have to go get the lab coat he keeps in his car. It's amusing because, really, nobody's questioning that he has a lab coat when he's an office worker. I guess they assume he just has it for fun. Good thing brainwashing can explain away his bad lying. Like, I think he's brainwashing them to believe it as well as giving them memories, because if all he did was give him one memory, he would just question why he has only that one memory of him. Because if he was really working in that office, he would have a lot more memories of him than just one. So he'd just wonder what was going on. The guy laughs and says sorry, which is nice of him. And he says that Gary can't have a 10-year work anniversary every day, and lets him in. It's nice of Gary to thank him and call him buddy, but I guess he just thinks he has to. I guess the brainwashing and memory creation have to be in tandem with each other. He can't brainwash without creating a memory. He goes into the elevator with uncomfortable people, and we see Jerry at work playing a computer game involving skiing. Apparently, he got a job again. Good. Either that is trying to take place earlier in the continuity when he had a job, because he had a job in the Parasite episode, but that's confusing considering how long it took for this issue to be released. He greets Jerry and confuses him, and tricks him by implanting fake memories. So let's see what those are. Beth caught them together. She told Rick, and Rick turned Gary into a parasite out of revenge and rewrote Jerry's memories. Gary says they can run away together to the only safe place he knows. It's amusing that when someone asks where Jerry is and someone says what happened, he's like, again? How'd that happen twice? Oh, I guess he's referring to Rick. Since when does he think he needs Jerry's help instead of getting Morty to help him? The whole reason he uses Morty in particular is because he needs him as a stealth device to hide him from the Galactic Federation. Then we see Rick and Morty wearing special helmets along with the Council of Ricks and a few Mortys, because even Rick acknowledges that he needs their help. Then Rick uses camera footage to find out that Jerry already got taken to a safe place, but I have to wonder how Rick will ever figure out where he decided to take Jerry, because he didn't say that in the office. He could have taken him anywhere. They go into a scary-looking alien-shaped spaceship to Mars, and Rick complains that he missed them and doesn't have his portal gun. He says, interestingly, that it would have been easy to just find a reality where they hadn't taken off yet so they could take that Jerry. But he really wants to humor Morty, so he doesn't. Then they go to New Mars City. I guess Rick terraformed Mars to make it inhabitable in this universe, which is proven by them buying an apartment with a Mr. Meeseek's real estate agent. They have a bakery together and adopt a baby alien. And it turns out it took Jerry all day to get the baby to sleep, and he was just about to start dinner. Even though he makes Beth do all the dinners. Gary wants to complain that Mars Co is run by idiots, but he's interrupted because he might complain too loud and wake up the baby. Somehow they thought adopting a baby with flesh-dissolving acids was a good idea. I guess because they felt sorry for it because nobody else would ever adopt it. Gary's unhappy at the meal is going to be expected to eat, and it turns out canned spaghetti is the only thing Jerry knows how to cook. And Jerry asks how this has never come up before. Can't he be told to Google how to cook and follow a recipe book? And Gary can't make him a great cook with fake memories. And I wish it was explained that it's because Gary himself doesn't know how to cook, which is why he doesn't do the cooking or teach Jerry how to cook. He can't give people skills that he doesn't have because he has no way of imagining someone doing something as complex as cooking wonderfully. He doesn't know anything about cooking. Even if he gave Jerry a memory of him cooking, I guess Jerry still wouldn't be able to cook in the present. So it would just make him question why he can't cook now. And he realized that and stopped himself. So he accepts it and is nice to him. Or he chose not to make him remember he could cook. And then an explosion in the wall happens behind them. Then Rick proceeds to waste a bunch of our time because he won't just immediately kill the brain parasite. So instead there's going to be tons of dialogue wasting our time for no reason, because the writer wrote himself into a corner by having Rick show up. Good thing it's explained that these two have brain protecting helmets. Though Jerry has a good point. He just wants to be happy, and this is making him happy. He thinks he's been with Gary for years when he's really been with him for only 27 hours. The creepiest thing about this is that Gary's been brainwashing and lying to him the entire time, and is perfectly fine with it himself. Even though he thinks he loves Jerry, and actually has a history he's lying about. Somehow he's not questioning that he can make him have memories. Well, he thinks Rick made him that way. But he doesn't even feel guilty about using that. Well, I guess because he thinks he's making things the way they're supposed to be. The problem is, he could have just been completely honest with Jerry from the start, and maybe he would have given him a chance anyways because he liked the fake memories he had with him and just wants to be happy. I guess it makes sense because it's instinctive for parasites to use their powers because it's easier. So as a result, he's the bad guy and Jerry's being kidnapped and manipulated. Because Rick kept talking, like an idiot, Jerry had time to push Rick and punch him. Morty finally asked why the parasite ran off with his dad instead of breeding and making more parasites like last time. Rick explains as he's chasing them that if you could rewrite the memories of everyone around you to make the world you need to change your memories to match them, or you'd just be navigating blind. So Gary really does think he's in love with Jerry, and Jerry wouldn't want him to make a bunch of parasites. It's interesting to see the parasites as not just wanting to multiply and freeload for no reason. This makes more sense. Rick pursues them in a spaceship as they're on a scooter and gives a panicked Morty the controls to his spaceship. Jerry's knocked out of the scooter and Rick somehow jumps off walls of a building. A portal gets created below Rick and Morty pulls him out as they get away. And Rick says that it must have been a dimension somehow made up entirely of concussive energy because it felt like he was being hit by thousands of high-speed ping-pong balls. Out of nowhere, Gary makes a plan to jump off the cliff with Jerry. Oh, and fake their deaths and warp to another universe. Okay. Then Rick confronts them, and again, I wonder why he's not instantly killing him. But at least he made an interesting insult that because gravity is the weakest force, Gary's so weak that he can't even stand up to gravity. You know, Rick's always wanted Jerry to not be with Beth, but I guess he's doing this all for Morty, because Morty doesn't want the status quo to be changed and Jerry to live with a parasite. So the story is kind of sweet in that sense, because if Rick was just being selfish, he wouldn't bother. Gary naturally tells him that they aren't hurting anybody. Maybe if Rick hadn't clearly telegraphed his attack, Gary wouldn't have been able to dodge the laser and punch him. Morty tells Jerry the truth, and says that he can't say Gary doesn't love him, but he's a fantasy taking him away from real life, and he shouldn't let him make choices for him. Gary gets beaten, and he says he has a gift for Jerry, and is going to take it away. So he gives him a fake memory that he kidnapped Jerry at gunpoint, just as he dies, which makes sure Jerry won't miss him. And we're never gonna know why he was able to make a bad memory. The whole reason the parasites got defeated in that episode of the show was that Morty realized they couldn't make bad memories. But apparently Sleepy Gary was the one parasite that had the genetic mutation that let him make bad memories. I wish this was addressed and that was the explanation. It can easily be explained, but if you don't think about it, then in retrospect this does come off like kinda confusing, contradictory. But whatever. Maybe the reason I didn't realize and get confused by it at first, and only realize this problem in retrospect, was that it doesn't make any sort of sense that the parasites could only create positive memories. Like, they already have the magical ability to create memories. Why on earth would they be restricted to only making positive ones? I can understand them choosing to only create positive ones because you think that if they create negative ones, then the people living with them wouldn't want them around. And so they're scared of the consequences. And so they never happen to make bad memories. It's not that they can't make bad memories, it's just that they were never given a strong enough reason to. Because they were never smart enough to think that they needed to do that. If you think about it, Sleepy Gary did give Jerry a bad memory in the sense that he made him think he was going through the stress of keeping from Beth that he was sleeping with her husband. Like, that's not a good memory. He was shown with good memories, but there was still an underlying problem with them the whole time. It wasn't completely idyllic. It's not like they were always together, according to the memory. Rick's narration says that the parasites are so dangerous that quarantine doesn't work. But why didn't he know that obvious fact from the start? He says he needs a precautionary measure and can't risk them getting to his head again. So he pulls out a needle device and puts it in the parasite, thinking that he's better than Jerry and wants to keep being in control. Huh? We see him put some red liquid tube in the nutrient tube, and he initiates attempt number 9. 9? What, did this whole story happen 9 times before this? But you think he would have given up right away. Like a smart person would learn his lesson the first time. What did he have to gain? This story logically never would have happened. There was no reason for Sleepy Gary to still be alive and break out of a tube in Rick's lab. It would actually make more sense if he was from an alternate dimension and stole Rick's portal gun to come to this one. So of course this dumb story was written by the same writer who wrote Rick as body switching the main characters for months, and somehow being unable to switch them back, and then had Morty killed for no reason. Although I could have been fine with that story if it was explained right from the start that it was a dimension that we had never seen before. That it wasn't supposed to be the dimension that the comic started out in. Just some random throwaway dimension. Then I would have been fine with it because it's just showing off an alternate universe Rick that's just that evil. So it wouldn't feel like it was contradicting every time he was nice to Morty, ever. At least the issue was interesting to see, if creepy. Gary running away with Jerry was an obvious idea. So they're using the story potential of him and exploring how the alien parasites think. They rewrite their own memories and end up believing in the fake identity they give themselves. I still don't understand why the parasite didn't multiply though. Because if that's the case, the other parasites had no reason to multiply. They wouldn't even know they were parasites. So this just contradicts the show. If they didn't know they were parasites because Sleepy Gary didn't, like, wouldn't they consciously choose not to multiply because they'd have no reason to? But this guy wasn't aware that he was always a parasite because he woke up in Rick's tube. So he didn't think he had to care about multiplying. And there are two different times where Rick, if he was actually smart, would have instantly shot Gary and instead talked a whole bunch, which gave people the chance to fight him. That didn't make them look admirable, because Rick had to be made an idiot for that to happen. Well, it was surprisingly nice of Gary to make his death easier on Jerry. But in retrospect, it didn't make any sense that he was able to give him a bad memory, because it completely contradicted the show. But again, the comic isn't canon to the show. This could just be an alternate universe, Gary. This whole thing could be taking place in an alternate universe where they can make bad memories. It makes more logical sense that they always could create bad memories and they just didn't choose to because they thought if they had bad memories of the parasites, they wouldn't want them around.